Yeah, thank you for having me today. My name is Leila Gonen. I work for Oregon Department of Forestry as a community assistance forester in the Urban and Community Forestry Program. And I am but one person who is a member of the state of Oregon's response to emerald ash borer. I really do want to emphasize, both before I begin this presentation and also throughout this presentation, what a collaborative effort Oregon's response has been, and I hope continues to be, to emerald ash borer. I saw a number of my current collaborators, both within the state and outside the state, in the people column earlier. And I want to invite them, if we get into questions and answer Q&A session, to also participate in that as well, because like I said, I'm one person in this response. I know some things. I certainly don't know everything. I think that one of the things that has really been our strength is the strength in numbers and in the variety of backgrounds and expertise that we're able to bring to our emerald ash borer response, really across agencies, across different organizational structures, et cetera. So I do want to just give a really quick introduction to emerald ash borer. Most of this presentation is going to be focused on the kind of coordination that the state has been up to. But now that I've heard that people don't feel confident with signs and symptoms of EAB, I have a slide at the end that I can go into a little bit of detail if there's time. So emerald ash borer, just briefly, as we all know, this is an invasive beetle in North America. It's highly destructive wood-boring beetle that infests and kills ash trees in the genus. This is true ash in the genus Fraxinus. All ash, all North American ash, all European ash are susceptible to emerald ash borer, and already hundreds of millions of ash trees have been killed throughout the Midwest and Eastern United States. And it's actually the larvae that do the bulk of the damage with EAB. The adults will lay their eggs on the bark of the trees. The larvae will hatch from those eggs and they'll burrow into the inner bark. And then that's where they begin to feed on the phloem and the cambium, where that active cell division is happening, where sugars are being transported from the roots and shoots. And over the course of about 5 years or so, this will actually just girdle and kill the tree entirely. And emerald ash borer has been present in North America. Well, it was first detected in 2002 in North America. Likely it was present for a few years before its initial detection, and it has spread really rapidly across North America in the span of about 20 or 25 years. In 2022, we had our first known detection of emerald ash borer in the western coast of North America. This was in Forest Grove, Oregon. And of course, recently we had our next detection on the west coast in Vancouver, Canada. So this map does need to be updated now since 2022. I should note there's no sort of landscape scale eradication method for emerald ash borer. When it comes to managing EAB, it's about slowing the spread, managing points of infestation, and dealing with the problem really preemptively rather than reactively. EAB cycles really quickly, kills trees really quickly, and those populations begin to increase exponentially and can if someone isn't prepared, they can be dealing with a lot of dead trees all at once, and it becomes a really massive problem financially, labor-wise, ecologically, if an area isn't able to prepare ahead of time. Fortunately, because emerald ash borer was present in the Midwest and East Coast for 20 or so years prior to its arrival in Oregon, the state was able to prepare and plan for EAB well before it was detected here. Oregon Department of Forestry and Oregon Department of Agriculture published an EAB readiness and response plan for Oregon in 2018. This was done with support from numerous other local and state agencies, federal agencies, as well as plenty of people who had that experience of working with EAB out east. So a lot of effort and planning and voices went into this readiness and response plan. This plan was then revised again in 2021. What's kind of ironic is, given that EAB was detected here in 2022, it was likely here for a few years prior to that detection. So it was actually probably here while this EAB readiness and response plan was being written. So that kind of underscores the importance of preparing, because EAB could very likely be in a community without that community knowing for a while. And it was because of this readiness and response plan that Oregon was able to jump so quickly into managing this beetle, I think rather effectively, at least if we're comparing to previous attempts at managing emerald ash borer. Also, prior to its known detection here in Oregon, ODF went about collecting seed from native Oregon ash throughout the state between 2019 and 2022. This was done to preserve genetic diversity that was found across the state. This was a lesson that we've been learning as EAB has been spreading across the continent and killing scores of native ash trees, is that we're seeing a rapid decline in genetic diversity of native trees throughout the continent. So in order to hopefully hedge against that, we've been collecting, or we had collected, seed from a variety of provenances across the Willamette Valley. And this was also done not only to preserve genetic diversity, but also to contribute toward EAB resistance breeding trials being taken on by multiple universities and research institutions. Of course, then in 2022, we had our first known detection of emerald ash borer and still only known population of emerald ash borer in the state of Oregon. This was detected in Forest Grove, which is about 30 miles west of Portland, our major metropolitan area in Oregon. It was actually a person picking up their kid from summer camp who noticed that the trees in the parking lot, the ash trees, were looking like they were in bad shape. So he took a close look and saw what he thought was an emerald ash borer infestation. Within 24 hours, entomologists at ODF and ODA were able to confirm that it was in fact EAB, and the readiness and response plan was able to jump into action. So with that, Oregon established a statewide EAB task force that's headed by ODA, and ODF and Oregon State University are primary agency partners here. This task force is also made up of representatives from a really broad coalition of local, state, federal agencies, nonprofits, utilities, even private industry folks. We hold regular meetings and working groups in these variety of subcommittees, and we really do put out quite a lot of material and do quite a lot of kind of boots on the ground type work as a result of this task force. ODA also established a quarantine around Washington County. This is the county just west of Portland where Forest Grove is located. This enforceable quarantine does restrict the movement of all ash material out of the county and requires that if someone does want to move that material out of the county, that they treat and or get a compliance agreement with ODA in order to move that material. So treatment for emerald ash borer wood waste looks something like grinding or chipping that wood to under an inch, debarking and removing at least an inch of underlying wood, heat treatment in a kiln at a minimum of 160 degrees Fahrenheit for at least 60 minutes, burying under 12 inches of soil, incinerating or processing into secondary materials. As EAB spreads across the state, this quarantine is also likely to expand. And finally, this quarantine also strongly suggests that tree workers limit ash tree removal and pruning to the winter months. And that's because EAB is most active and flying in the summertime. We want to move material as little as possible during the active flight season of emerald ash borer to slow the spread. And so I'm going to kind of go into the sort of technical aspects of what the state has been doing in response to emerald ash borer first. And so the kind of big project that we have been working on, and in particular ODA has been heading up, is the Slowing Ash Mortality, or SLAM, surveying and monitoring and sort of small scale eradication approach. So ODA is annually surveying ash trees surrounding the point of initial detection. As of the end of 2023, because the 2024 field season is ongoing and those data have yet to be fully developed. But as of the 2023 field season, we know that about 10.5 square miles of the area around Forest Grove is currently infested with emerald ash borer. And this, I will say actually that this map is not entirely up to date. Some of these trees have already been removed that are on here that it's not necessarily shown with this on this map. But if anyone is interested, this is an active link. I hope that these slides can go out to the audience. later, or you can just search online ODA EAB Management Action Dashboard, and there's an interactive map that anyone can access to take a look at the current infestation area. To go into a little bit more detail, these trees are kind of, there's sort of a hierarchy of how these trees are organized based on how close they are to the point of detection. So first, in blue, these are sink survey areas, trees that are located really close to the epicenter of infestation. These trees are treated, or they are girdled, and the girdled trees are stressed, and they attract emerald ash borer to them at greater numbers. So the goal here is to draw emerald ash borer from these high density areas to these sink sites, and then end emerald ash borer life cycles by either having them feed on treated trees or by felling trees that are girdled in the fall. So trees are girdled in the spring, and then that following fall, after EAB has gone dormant for the winter, those trees are felled and destroyed in order to kill the larvae that are living within them. Samples are then collected from girdled trees, in the fall, and we'll have wood samples and larvae samples to take a look at. Then in red, these are SLAM, these slowing ash mortality trees. This is also known as the Ring of Fire. So these are sites that are on the perimeter of the known emerald ash borer infestation. And these consist of a girdled tree and then 1 to 3 nearby treated trees located roughly every quarter mile around the known infested area. And the goal of these sites is to then prevent emerald ash borer from flying beyond. So it's to keep the population as contained as possible, and also to determine how far EAB has spread and the density of that spread. And again, those girdled trees are then felled in the fall to kill any emerald ash borer that are present and then sampled. And then finally, we have our sentry trees, and these are in the green, the kind of outer perimeter around the edges of the map. So these are trees that are only girdled. There's no treated trees on these sites, and they're located roughly every mile or so following riparian areas. So these are all in natural areas around this Ring of Fire. And these girdled sentry trees are also then felled in the fall and investigated for signs and symptoms or presence of larvae in them. And they help us determine if emerald ash borer has jumped beyond this Ring of Fire and formed any satellite populations. So these are some photos of what girdled trees in those riparian areas look like. So as you can see, you just strip off a whole section of bark at the base of the tree. Already in Forest Grove, we are removing trees in urban spaces. This is a neighborhood where there were a handful of streets that were just where the tree canopy was almost entirely made up of ash on particular streets. These trees were heavily infested with emerald ash borer, and we removed them back in April. We are on track. We're working with a community tree planting organization. We are on track to replant these trees in the winter, this upcoming winter. This was a kind of unique opportunity we had. We had an infusion of bipartisan infrastructure legislation money come through that we were able to divert toward tree removal throughout Forest Grove for heavily infested areas. This kind of is potentially a sort of early stage. This is not a service that ODF and ODA will likely be able to offer as the infestation expands throughout the state. But right now, in an effort to keep populations contained, we were able to remove some of these trees at no cost to the homeowners. We also have a trapping system that's been ongoing for actually many years now, even before EAB was found in Oregon. There's also an online web map. Again, this link here is available for anyone to view, and this image of the map was just a screenshot taken from that web map. So we're coordinating with local, state, and federal agencies to set up traps all throughout the state. EAB traps can be really effective as a surveillance method, but you also can produce plenty of false negatives. So they're not the only option. They're not the only tool to use if you're looking for early detections of emerald ash borer. But they are a really useful outreach and education tool when people see these purple traps hanging from trees in parks, and there's a sign at the base of the tree letting people know what's going on. It's a good opportunity for people to learn about emerald ash borer. And as they do begin flying in known infested areas, it'll help you determine whether you're in the active flight season or not. We're also we're collaborating with USDA APHIS on their biocontrol program. So APHIS has been releasing biocontrol parasitic wasps throughout the US since 2007 to manage populations of emerald ash borer. They can be reasonably effective at killing, at least keeping populations lower than they otherwise would be. We are working with USDA to release these wasps in Round Forest Grove this year. And all of these wasp samples come from the USDA lab in Brighton, Michigan. So this is what that looks like. We actually just receive so some wasps parasitize the EAB larvae, and that in this case is Spathias and Tetrasticus. So with USDA will actually just send us a bolt of ash wood that has been infested with EAB larvae. Then those larvae have been parasitized by wasps who have laid their eggs inside the larvae. And so we just hang the bolt from the tree and await the emergence of the parasitic wasps from the EAB larvae. And it's the same situation with the photo on the right, except that Oobius parasitize EAB eggs. So this is just a slip of paper with EAB eggs that have been parasitized by Oobius. And again, just wait for those to emerge. We keep the specific release sites rather vague so they don't get disturbed by a member of the public or someone who's curious about what's going on. We release the parasites at each site that we've got around Forest Grove. We're going to be doing this for about 2 years and then spend 2 years going out and collecting wasps to determine if they have actually been able to survive and multiply and spread on their own in our climate here in the Pacific Northwest. So those were kind of the sort of technical aspects of keeping the EAB population contained and managed as much as possible. But a huge other component of Oregon's EAB response is also in communications, in outreach, and in community engagement. So we've already put out quite a number of materials out for the general public and also for specific, professional audiences, homeowner audiences, recreators, et cetera. All throughout the state, and we have a ton more on our docket that we are looking to release and disseminate across the state using a variety of different methods. So this is just an example, a few examples of some of the items that we've created. So this is like a general poster on EAB for people to hang. We really like to utilize QR codes when we do this work. That just takes people to an active link that can be updated as the EAB infestation continues, because we know that this is going to be a constantly moving target and a changing situation over time. This is a table that we created that compares different insecticide treatment options that property owners can really use to compare their different options that they have present to them. A pocket guide. This is a quad fold pocket guide that we've been handing out to people, really anybody who is going to be spending a lot of time outside and is, a lot of professionals, arborists, tree surveyors, landscapers, et cetera, people who are going to be out and about looking at ash trees on a regular basis and need to know the signs and symptoms sort of when they see something that looks suspicious. And a decision tree for people to figure out what it is that they can actually do with their ash wood if they live within the quarantine region. So, a real variety of different materials and a lot more that's on the way and a lot more that I didn't share in this slide either. I also, again, really want to stress that all of these materials pretty much and moving forward will continue to be the case. Were made in partnership and collaboration between different state agencies, our federal partners in the U.S. Forest Service and USDA, as well as many, many local groups, such as cities and municipalities, utilities, soil and water conservation districts, nonprofits, and private industry as well. Again, in addition to these sort of paper and PDF materials, we also have a handful of publicly available web maps so people can track the EAB infestation and our efforts to contain it in real time. Another program that I really want to highlight here that we've been heavily involved in at the state level is this workforce development program that's put in place by Centro Cultural. Centro Cultural is a community center that serves underserved Latino and Hispanic communities throughout Washington County. They've been around since for I think over 50 years, and they've got a ton of really great programs and social services for community members there, including a handful of workforce development programs. And one of them is a climate justice youth leadership program. So youth, kind of high school age and like early college age kids actually earn a stipend. So they get paid to come in on a regular basis and learn about natural resource management in an effort to give people exposure to what working in the natural resource industry looks like, and in particular, how the natural resource industry sort of intersects with urban life. You know, the fact that there are pathways toward natural resource management, even if you live in a sort of more urban or city-centered environment. In particular, we at ODF and ODA have been partnering with this group, as well as Tualatin Soil and Water Conservation District and the Backyard Habitat Certification Program. This is a big collaborative effort to focus their learning materials over the past year or so on emerald ash borer and managing EAB. So they've actually been receiving a lot of training in EAB surveying, in management, in communications. We've tapped them into many of the projects that we've been doing out in Forest Grove. This is a picture here of one of the kids learning to debark, to survey, you know, to actually take a look. These are real infested bolts of ash taken from around Forest Grove. And I was out there that day. We found a ton of EAB larvae in these trees. So they're getting a lot of really good hands-on experience. In addition, the Central Cultural campus in Cornelius, which is just east of Forest Grove, has a ton of ash trees on it. So these kids actually developed EAB management plans for the ash trees on the property that they then presented to the board and the executive director that they're going to be using to inform their management strategy moving forward with these trees. So I really just want to highlight this to show there's a quote that's like, I think usually misapplied to Winston Churchill that says, never let a good crisis go to waste. Even if the quote is probably not something that he ever was recorded saying, it's still a really good, I think, mantra to live by. This is not a good situation. This is going to be costly. I think we all wish that emerald ash borer wasn't present in Oregon, but we may as well make the most of it and use it as an opportunity to spread resources to the people who need it most, to empower people to get involved in the best ways possible. Finally, also a handful of public education and public engagement campaigns. Of course, emerald ash borer and plenty of other forest pests move quickly through the spread of downwoody material, and in particular firewood. So we've been partnering and coordinating with the Don't Move Firewood campaign that's part of the Nature Conservancy to put together some good educational materials. And I've been also working recently pretty closely with Oregon Parks and Rec Department to get messaging out into Oregon state parks. They already do a really good job at state parks of educating the public on why moving firewood is not the best idea, and encourage people to buy, you know, kiln dried wood. But this just adds another layer to that story for them. Also, just a ton. We're constantly out in the community conducting outreach, education, workshops, professional trainings, and publishing papers and articles in a variety of different journals. We're really trying to focus. I mean, we're really trying to reach every audience as we possibly can. Professionals, municipal employees, members of the general public, trying to reach people where they're at. This photo on the right was, I went to State Parks Day at Silver Falls State Park, which is one of the most trafficked state parks in the state of Oregon, has some ash trees on site. We were able to set up a table and actually get a lot of really good engagement just from curious hikers walking by who wanted to know what was going on with this table. So really a variety of opportunities here to reach people where they're at and in the way that's relevant to them. We've also got an online and by phone reporting hotline for anybody who thinks that they've seen signs and symptoms of emerald ash borer to make a report. You can upload photos to it, really make it as detailed as possible. And we do check it and report it on a regular basis. And so, since I heard that plenty of people don't feel confident with signs and symptoms of emerald ash borer, I can go over these a little kind of briefly in the few minutes I have left. So first, as with any, general signs of distress in your trees, you want to be on the lookout for just general signs of canopy decline and epicormic shoots. Always a good thing to be out on the lookout for, but of course, with canopy decline and epicormic shoots are like a general sign of stress. So it could be a variety of things that's causing this in an ash tree. Also, once your ash has lost this much, 50% or more of its canopy, it's really too late if you're interested in saving this tree using insecticide treatment. So you want to be on the lookout for earlier signs and symptoms, especially if you're trying to stay on the bleeding edge of an EAB detection. So again, good signs of good general symptoms here, but we want to be a little bit more specific. So what we really want to be looking out for are indicators of woodpecker activity. Woodpecker really like to eat EAB larvae, and so they will fleck away the bark. This usually starts out higher up in the canopy, and you'll see this kind of blonding pattern as they peel that outer bark away to reveal more of that inner bark material. So look for flecking, sort of blonding higher up in the canopy. Also be on the lookout for the actual holes, the woodpecker holes that the woodpeckers produce. Another good earlier sign or symptom of EAB is bark splits. The bark will actually begin to delaminate from the bole of the tree as the EAB larvae eat away at that inner bark. So look for splits. Again, look high up in the canopy, use binoculars and see if you can find them on the undersides of branches. You might also see the larval galleries underneath, and you can peel that bark away if you happen to have access to it and find these serpentine larval galleries here. Unfortunately, I don't have a photo here on this slide of one of the most telltale signs of an EAB infestation, and those are D-shaped exit holes. Oh, I guess there's kind of a photo right here. It's a little hard to see, but this is in comparison that's showing this D-shaped exit hole, comparing it to a woodpecker hole. So whereas woodpecker holes have this kind of are rough around the edges and are sort of oval shaped and rather large, these D-shaped exit holes are very distinctly D-shaped. They have one flat side to them. They're about 1/8 of an inch in diameter, and they're really clean. They're not going to find frass or boring dust or anything around them. So if you happen to find these D-shaped exit holes on an ash tree, absolutely make a report. You probably got an EAB infestation on your hands. So those are just briefly the signs and symptoms of EAB. So that hopefully you all feel a little bit more empowered. Take a look at those. I've got a ton of resources here, so if these slides do go out to folks, please feel free to click around. A lot of these are resources that the state of Oregon has produced, but plenty of these are also resources from around the country that I use frequently in creating my these EAB materials. So with that, again, some other great indicator of not only woodpecker activity, but also larval galleries down here. Here's my email address. Please feel free to reach out with any questions. I'm happy to take any questions that people have either now or later during the Q&A session. And thank you so much for having me today.